Welcome back. So governance experts say there is nothing unusual about a standoff over budget disagreements, but they also say the postponement of the budget speech was inevitable and will hit South Africa's economy hard. Business editor Xolani Mbanjwa is in Cape Town. He's standing by with the CEO of the South African Institute for Taxation. Xolani, more reactions? What are you hearing?
Good morning, Naledi. There is a lot of speculation as to how the government of national unity will proceed after this unprecedented move yesterday, which many people are still counting the cost. But what is clear is that the South African economy will be impacted. Already we are dealing with negative perceptions from the Trump administration. Now that we have to deal with the uncertainty of this all, what impact is going to have on the economy and down the road on people's livelihoods and pockets. And the 2 percentage point increase, it's something that it seems that we must do because South Africa is in a spot of bother. But you're right, I'm joined by Professor Keith Engel, the CEO of the South African Institute for Taxation. Thank you so much, Professor. Let's talk about the impact of a 2 percentage point increase in value-added tax for a country like South Africa. Is it worth it? Because it's going to hit poor people harder than middle income and rich people.
Well, it's going to hit the middle and the poor and the working poor. So it hits most. It hits the rich too, but not disproportionately that much. The question is, what are you buying? Now, the ANC has a certain program. This is to support the ANC program, which was 2 parts. Get the debt down and keep the big government going. So they had a lot of programs they were pushing through, including a lot of social welfare grants, and that's what they believed in. So this is a reflection of a larger agenda. And the question is, do you believe in that agenda? If you do, well, that's fine. The problem really is, even if you believe in that agenda, we're now at breaking point. We've talked about this before. Whether it's income tax, it's VAT, the bottom line is everybody is squeezed. And the fear is, are you going to keep squeezing? Now, if you look at the budget, for example, it doesn't include NHI. That's still yet to come. So what other big expenditures they want to keep coming? And so do you continue to believe in that direction and keep coming more and more? Now, I know the markets are a little shocked because there's uncertainty. On the other hand, I think investors are going to be far more scared if they know that the government can announce any tax increase they want and keep them coming. So I think this is a bit of short-term pain for long-term hope.
This is not how things are supposed to be done by a government in terms of shock and awe and leaving things to the last minute. It puts into question the manner in which we manage issues such as this, and that is going to lead to more uncertainty.
Well, first thing of all, I think it's okay in a democracy to have disagreement. So this is the first time in South Africa we've had meaningful disagreement. So I'm not always so sure. A little bit of disruption is okay. In America, there's a lot of bills that people fight about, and it doesn't put the country into jeopardy. However, what happened here was it was very clear the ANC was going to ram this down the rest of the government's throat as if they had 51%. And they didn't have that. And so that's why a lot of people said, you haven't consulted with us, because had you, we would have opposed it from the very beginning. They had no support. The MK, EFF clearly was not going to support a VAT increase. And why they believed the DA would go along with it, I really don't know. So somebody made a major political miscalculation. Once you have a GNU, they should have brought in a full GNU. So it's a GNU fight that they didn't say, look, we're no longer a single ANC and we're going to build this budget. It's now we have to take into account our partners early. And at least if you want to do that, you take your risk. And they took a very big risk here indeed.
And everybody is going to pay for it. We had a conversation about the similarities or comparing South Africa to the United States. Obviously, in the United States, there's always that standoff when it comes to the budget, and the government is halted, it goes into a lockdown. But that is something that is now happening here. That's what you do. That's what happens in a democracy where there is a government government of national unity like ours or a coalition. But we were speaking earlier about the tax implications. For a person who earns 1.1 million in South Africa and earning 1.1 million in the US, the way people are taxed, although we are not talking about income tax, the way people are taxed is different. There is more tax in South Africa than there is in a developed first world like the United States. Explain why that is not out of kilter with what should actually be happening.
Yeah, well, I think our problem here is we have a very small tax base. So we're squeezing it as hard as we can for everything else. So in the United States, the big advantage they have is they've got a large middle class, they have a large working class. So that means you don't have to squeeze them as hard. What we have here is we've got too many unemployed people, we have too many government workers here, and we only have a small private sector that can handle this. So we keep squeezing. And basically what the ANC said is, well, this is the most efficient way to keep squeezing. But when you're getting down to the differences, for example, you're exempt from income tax up to 240,000 Rand in the United States, not 100,000. Your rates, if you're making about 1.1 million, you're probably in your mid-30s here. In the United States, you're 10%, or not, maybe 15, 20 when you effectively average it out. So the rates are a lot lower, and the time you start kicking into 37% is about $650,000. So it's not just about a top rate, it's about all the rates in between. And that's what I was saying yesterday. It isn't about the rich being taxed at 45%. It's the middle being taxed in 18, then 33, then you're going into 36, you've got 39. You've got a lot of rates hitting people that are really middle and lower middle. And now I think it's about 2 million you get to the 45% rate, which again sounds like a lot of money. But take 2 million, divide it by 20, you're really talking about 100,000 plus, which is kind of middle. Nothing more than that. So what's happening here is our base is too small, and they're pretending people are rich when they're not. Now the usual battle has been go after income tax, go after that side. Well, they would have gone after that side, but what you see and you read all the things that were released now, they weren't going to get the money they needed. They couldn't get the money. It wasn't that they loved us. It wasn't that they cared. They couldn't do it anymore. So if they're going to not choose the VAT, well, maybe they'll freeze all the income tax rates. Maybe they'll try to drive it up. Maybe they've got to go back to fuel levy. They're going to have to go to a whole host of things. But that's the question is, do you believe in the paradigm that the government should keep growing? And if you look at the budget, you'll see for years ahead, they want to keep growing government, and they want to keep growing government beyond the GDP growth. So government is going to exceed its growth under their own view as to these 0.8, 0.9% GDP. Now, how can you go government beyond your basic GDP? That doesn't make sense.
A lot of things are not making sense. Lastly, Professor Engel, let's talk about this a very important issue. We are proposing a 2 percentage point value-added tax increase in order to make, some people have calculated that in a year there could be a plus minus 50 billion Rand that government could make in revenue. But it doesn't mean that we will make that money, because if you increase how much the prices of goods and services and food, people might spend less and you might end up getting less revenue, but people are paying more.
Well, you see, when they calculated the VAT, they'll get more money, maybe not as much as they hope, but they're not at a Laffer curve yet. What they were worried about in the income tax is you were reaching a Laffer curve where they'd actually raise the rates and they would find they would get less than if they hadn't. That's why they weren't touching the top marginal brackets over there. So at the VAT, we haven't reached that point. But one of the problems, again, with Treasury is all their predictions. So they're always predicting best case scenario. So for example, when they project all their budgets on growth, they never project in there's going to be a recession. Now we know internationally there's going to be a recession 1 out of 10 years, but no government ever predicts that. They just assume is everything's going to keep going up and up and up. So this is just part of that over-optimism.
Professor Engel, thank you so much for your time. A lot to ponder in terms of this proposal, and a lot to ponder for the ANC. A lot has been put at the doorstep, Naledi, of the African National Congress, particularly Minister Enoch Godongwana and President Cyril Ramaphosa, as to how this could have been better managed. But we'll keep bringing you more reaction as we try and make sense of this particular decision, unprecedented, that we are postponing. We have postponed to the 12th of March the budget speech for the first time in South Africa's democracy. Back to you in studio.